I appear like I'm listening, but then I'm like dazing off because something else has caught my attention. It's not like those stereotypes where people are like, squirrel. No, it's not that. With my autism, um, oh shoot, I forgot the question. See, this is what ADHD does.
This is my whole life, so I completely understand. I'm like, well, I don't even know what I asked, to be honest. What's up, my bis and allies? Welcome back to Bisexual Behavior. I'm your host, Talia, and for some reason, I decided to record this intro at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday. I am still recovering from a trip that I had. I went to Puerto Rico about a week ago, and so I'm excited to be back and get back into things with the podcast. I'm so excited to share this interview that I had with content creator Nathan James. I had him on to talk about his journey with autism and ADHD and sobriety, and it's just a really powerful interview. He talks about his journey with also coming out as bisexual while growing up in a religious Caribbean family, and it's just such a powerful story, and I think you're gonna love it. I also recorded this interview back in June during Pride Month, so I kind of forgot most of the things that we talked about. And while I was editing the episode, I was just laughing and giggling the whole time. I think you guys are really gonna like it. I just had such a blast listening to it. So just a content warning for listeners. About I want to say 20 minutes into the interview, we talk about specifically sobriety and also thoughts of unaliving and self-harm. So it's only for about 5 minutes. So if you don't want to listen to something like that, definitely listen to yourself, take care of yourself, and just skip those 5 minutes. The rest is pretty positive and a really great interview. And I think it's really educational for people who maybe are neurodiverse or have neurodiverse people in their lives or just want to be more educated. And again, Nathan is just awesome. So it was just a really fun conversation to have. So without further ado, here's Nathan. Hello, Nathan. Welcome to Bisexual Behavior.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Hey, awesome. I was so happy to get you on the podcast because I love the content that you post. So you're a content creator. So why don't you just introduce yourself to our listeners? For those who are just joining us and haven't listened before, my name is Talia. My pronouns are she, her, and I am bisexual. What about you?
My name is Nathan. My pronouns are he, they. I am also bisexual, and I'm 27.
Awesome. I am 31. So I started to hit the age where I'm wait, am I 31 or 32? I actually can't remember how old I am. So that's your 30s for you, if you're wondering.
I mean, some days I'm just when people ask me how old are you, I forget. And I want to say 26, and it's oh wait, no, I'm 27 now.
You know what? Just hold on to 26. I feel like that's a fine age. So Nathan, one of the famous questions I ask all my guests is, what is your most bisexual behavior?
Oof. I definitely have to say not being able to sit straight. I can't sit straight. I'm sitting on a bed and I'm not even sitting straight. One leg's over here, the other leg's over there. And just
I feel that I have a weird leg situation right now where I have one leg where I'm sitting on top of it. The other one is just flown in a different direction. And I just don't know how I find that comfortable. But what is that about, just being on the bisexual spectrum or just the queer spectrum and needing to sit weird? I don't know what it is,
I
but
don't
so many
know.
people say the same thing.
It's either that or I love nose rings, and I feel a nose ring is a nice bisexual thing.
Yes, definitely gives a bisexual vibe.
Yeah.
So I want to tell my listeners a little bit about the kind of content that you put out there. And I'm curious about what got you into posting the content that you're sharing.
Yeah, so I post about being bisexual, autistic, having ADHD, and being sober from a perspective of being a Black man. I got inspired to start posting that stuff because I didn't have a lot of representation growing up and people to look to when it came to these things. So I wanted to start creating that content and share my experiences with that, hoping that people who may be struggling or in closet or, can relate and feel seen and heard.
That's awesome. I feel like it's so important to do that. And I think you're right that there is such a big space open in terms of like, you see a lot of content creators now that are talking about sexuality, but you don't see a ton of content creators who talk about the intersectionality between sexuality and neurodivergence. And I just feel like that is so important and I think relatable for a lot of people. So I commend you for doing that.
Thank you.
And one of the posts that I saw that you recently talked about was your coming out story. And you mentioned that you came out kind of later in life, which
Mhm.
I had the same experience. I know that, I mean, not the same exact experience, but I came out in my late 20s. So I can relate in a sense. But I think a lot of bisexual people end up coming out a little bit later in life. And I'm just like curious, what was your coming out journey like?
It was very hard. I grew up in a very religious family. My family's from the Caribbean, and being queer in a Caribbean family is not the greatest. It's very hard. Go to church every Sunday, always hearing those verses in the Bible about homosexuality and whatnot. So it was like very damaging for me growing up because like I knew I was different. I knew I liked guys and girls, and whenever I would have those thoughts, I would just feel like a lot of shame because of the way I was brought up. Um, so it took me a while, a really, really long while, to finally accept my bisexuality, which was last year. Um, and I came
Congratulations.
out. Thank you. I came out
You're
last
welcome.
year, March last year. Yeah.
Wow. So it's pretty recent. So how are you feeling now post coming out?
Oh, I feel so good. I feel so much freedom, so much joy. I just feel like my authentic self now. It's like I'm not having to put a mask on and pretend like I'm to be someone I'm not.
Yeah, that's so important. And so part of your coming out was that like also coming out to your family. And I can imagine that is really challenging, especially with the religious upbringing. And like, so how is your relationship with them? How did that all pan out?
Yeah, so it's just my mom and me. My dad was never around, but when I
Mhm.
came out to my mom, I was shaking and sweating because I didn't know what to say or how she was going to react. But I sat her down at the dining room table, and I sat there for like 10 minutes and didn't say anything. And we were just staring at each other. And then I finally said it. I was like, Mom, I'm bisexual. And then she didn't say anything for 10 minutes. And I was like, oh my God, what's happening?
Oh God, the anticipation.
The anticipation, exactly. Um, as soon as she stopped sitting in the silence, she said a few things that were very hurtful for me. Um, and I wasn't expecting the reaction that I got. Um, because I have family who are queer. My mom
Mhm.
supports them whenever they're going through a tough time with our family. So I wasn't expecting her reaction to be the one that I got, but I guess it's always different when it's your own kid who comes out as queer. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think a lot of times that like parents, it's hard like for them with that initial reaction, right? Like I feel like with my parents too, like they are very supportive and they always have been. But when I initially came out, the comments were not perfect. I mean, they weren't like
Mhm.
awful, but it was, things where it's like that initial reaction. I think it's really hard for parents to really control and know what to say that's right. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping that like things with your mom since then have gotten better and you were able to communicate about it since then. I just think the initial is such a hard reaction for people.
Yeah. I think we're in a better place now. I think she's still processing some of it like more. I when I talked to her last, I was like, "What happens if I bring a boy home?" And she was like, "Give me time." And I was like, "Okay." So I think,
Hopefully not much more time.
yeah, right. I think she's
Yeah.
getting there. Um, but yeah, I think she just needed time to like process everything.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for other people who might be like in a similar position where like they maybe had a religious upbringing or they're really nervous about coming out,
Mm.
especially if they are coming out like in their 20s or a little bit later in life?
Yeah, especially from a religious aspect, I would just say like your queerness is beautiful. Um, just know that you are not some abomination or you're not a sinner. You are a beautiful
Mhm.
human being, and who you love and who you want to love is up to you. And it is a beautiful thing. So don't ever feel like you are sinning or being a horrible person because you're not.
Exactly. That's such good advice. Also curious, so you talk about, living with autism as well. So is that something that you were, diagnosed with or knew about before you came out as bi, or is that something that's a little bit around the same time? How did that kind of journey
That's
play out as well?
actually fresh.
Ah.
I always knew I was different growing up, and I'm like my brain worked completely different. Um, and I was always very like just like the stereotypical traits of autism, along with things
Mhm.
that people don't really know about. But like I was very sensitive to sounds. I didn't really know how to socialize. So I was always like the shy, weird kid. Um,
Mhm.
I just didn't know social cues or anything. Um, it wasn't until some of my friends with autism were like, "Have you been tested?" And I was like, "No, why?" They're like, "I think you might be autistic." And I was like, I don't know." So I started doing research on autism, and I researched for an entire year. I was like so hyper fixated on it. And then I went to go see a psychiatrist and a psychologist. And they did an initial assessment for me. And then they wanted to do the bigger assessment that cost a lot of money. Um,
Of
Luckily,
course.
my insurance covered most of it, and I only had to pay like 200 out of pocket. Um,
That's still
I,
not a cheap cost, though,
yeah,
for a
still
diagnosis and
expensive.
testing. That's crazy. Jeez.
I know, like without insurance, it would have been like 1,000 or something dollars. Yeah,
Dang. Oh my gosh.
but I got my assessment in November last year.
Mhm.
Waited a few weeks for the results, and then my psychologist called me and was like, "Hey, check your email. I have your assessment." And I looked at it, and I was like, "Oh, yep, I am autistic."
How did that moment feel? Did you feel like kind of like a weight off your back when you like actually got the diagnosis?
It was very validating to know, like, okay, this is what's been going on with me since I've been a kid. And this is
Mhm.
why my brain works the way that it does. Because, I was always asking myself, like, what's wrong with me? And why do I do these things? And why do I stim the way that I do? Why do I get so
Mhm.
hyper focused on things? And why does my brain just, like, not shut off?
Well, I feel like it must have been really freeing. And it's kind of interesting because I think right now autism and just neurodivergence in general is get having this moment like on TikTok specifically. And I'm starting to
Mm-hmm.
feel like it almost is harmful in a way because I feel like it talks about the spectrum, but then also talks about like it almost positions it in a way that everyone could be autistic in a sense. But I feel
Mm-hmm.
like that's so harmful. And I almost feel like that same kind of ideology is very similar with bisexuality, where since it is a spectrum, people have this belief that anybody is bisexual because
Mm-hmm.
it's such a wide spectrum. Is that like something that you struggle with a lot where people maybe like, since it is such a vast spectrum, that they either disqualify your experience or, say harmful things? Like, what has your experience been with like talking to other people about it in general?
Yeah, it's been like a mixed bag. Obviously, for me, um, getting diagnosed with autism for as a person of color is way harder if than my white peers.
Mhm.
Like we have to go through so many hoops and so many psychologists and psychiatrists just to get like a diagnosis because they won't listen to us and believe us. Um, and even like with my official diagnosis, like some people who are not even neurodivergent will be like, "You're not autistic. Black people can't be autistic," and I'm just like,
That's crazy.
"You're wrong, actually." So it's just been like a really mixed bag. Most people understand, and it's mostly people who are neurodivergent that get it and like you know know what's up. But
Yeah.
other people are just like, "I know more than you, and you're not autistic." And I'm just like, okay.
What ways have you been able to cope with like the erasure or like the negative comments when people, say things like that to you?
Honestly, I'm such creative, and when I get like harmful comments, I'm usually it doesn't phase me anymore because I have to react certain ways as a black man. I have learned to react in a way that's not going to bring me harm or um, cause me any type of danger. Um, but for certain comments, I usually will make a video about the comment because I'm kind of petty. Uh,
I love a petty person. I'm there with you. So
I'm just a chaotic bisexual. It's what I do.
exactly. That's right. Those are one of the stereotypes that I'm like, yep, that's me. That's right.
So I'll make a video or I'll make a post about it and I'll like break down the comment and say like why this is wrong, or I'll make like a funny video about it and just expose a comment. Sometimes I'm nice and I won't expose a person because I don't want to be mean. But sometimes if it's like a racist comment, like no, you're getting exposed.
As you should. Yeah, absolutely. Also, I think it's like helpful for people because they probably like I'm sure some people when they say those things, they think they're not like intending to be mean. They just it's coming out of ignorance. So it's probably helpful for people to just see those videos to know like what is okay to say and why
Mhm.
it's not okay. So I
Yeah.
think that's a really great way to combat it instead of just like taking out all that negativity on the one person, just putting it out to the world so people can actually learn. So that's a great takeaway. But so you talk about a lot about how you had to really advocate for yourself as a Black man in terms of your own health. Do you have any tips for anyone else how to like advocate for your own health and like how to really stand up for yourself when it comes to getting a diagnosis, dealing with doctors, and that kind of thing?
I'd say definitely find the community. Lucky for me, like I've found a community of people of color who are neurodivergent and have those resources that I can use and find people who specialize in like adult diagnosis. Because obviously, as an adult, it's very hard to get diagnosed with autism because there's only like the kid test because they don't think adults can be diagnosed. So
That's a
it's
good
like,
point.
yeah, it's my autism assessment was very weird because they did like the same test they do on kids of me, and
But
they were
that's like,
like,
how is that going to be accurate? Because you're
right.
not a kid.
It was strange, but I actually kind of enjoyed it. But they had like they had me read a book about a frog. I forgot what it was about. It was very weird. Um, but like the entire time, like I was focused on this one thing, and I was asking questions about this one thing. I couldn't keep moving on from the page. I was like, why is he doing this? But
A classic sign for sure. And I think on your profile, you also mentioned that you have ADHD, right? So is
Mhm.
that, I feel like sometimes those, like, I feel like they kind of go hand in hand. Sometimes some of the symptoms like collide. So is that something that you got diagnosed with around the same time that you found out you had autism, or did you already know that beforehand?
Yeah, I got diagnosed with ADHD the year before I got diagnosed with autism. Um,
Okay.
and it's so funny because they both contradict each other and they make my life miserable sometimes.
Yeah, do you mind kind of talking about how they contradict each other? I'm very curious.
So, like, with my autism, like, I really like routines and like having routine, but my ADHD is like, no, let's just be spontaneous and do spontaneous stuff. And it just fucks up my mind so much. I'm
Oh
just like, oh my
no.
God. Um, my ADHD, like I always like to organize things in certain ways with my autism. Like my
Mhm.
books at home, they're all organized by author. And
Ooh.
then my ADHD is just like takes a book out and then doesn't put it back in the same place and it just gets all messed up and it's just like whatever. And I just get super overwhelmed by like laundry, but I want to fold my laundry so perfectly. But I look at my laundry and I'm just like, no.
I'll like put off folding laundry for honestly as long as I can. Like it could be multiple weeks, but when I do fold it, I'm like very intricate about it. Like nobody else
Yeah.
can touch it. I have to fold the laundry and put it away. But I'll put it off for as long as possible. So My
Yeah.
doctor also thinks I have ADHD, and I was supposed to get a test for it, but then I just never did. Classic move on my part. So, for listeners who might not be aware of like kind of like some of the nuances and differences, how would you describe like ADHD compared to autism?
ADHD is more so, I mean, for me, I know people have different experiences. Um, so from my experience, my ADHD is more so focus based.
Mm.
I have a lot of trouble focusing and just being able to sit still. Um, Growing up, I would always just like whenever someone's having an important conversation with me, like I appear like I'm listening, but then I'm like dazing off because something else has caught my attention. It's not like those stereotypes where people are like, squirrel. No, it's not that. um, and then like with my autism, um, oh shoot, I forgot the question. See, this is what ADHD does.
This is my whole life, so I completely understand. I'm like, well, I don't even know what I asked, to be honest. Oh, I was asking the differences between the two.
Ah,
Mhm.
and then autism. Um, autism is a spectrum. So just like being queer is a spectrum, like autism, everybody's gonna be different. Everybody's gonna have different experiences. But for me, I don't need a lot of support, but I still need a little bit of support.
Mhm.
Um, it's just it's like I don't even know how to describe it. It's just kind of messes with my life a lot. It
I'm
kind of
sure.
just ruins. I wouldn't say ruin. Like I talk about autism on my profile, um, but most of the time, sometimes I'll mention like it's not fun. Like it's actually really a disability, and it really disables me,
Mhm.
and it stops me from doing a lot of things. Like I can't do a 9 to 5 job. I just can't because I get very overwhelmed, and it's just like I can't. I need breaks. I need accommodations.
It's
Which
crazy that it's expected that most people can do a 9 to 5 job because it's
yeah,
really not natural for humans. Like, and
no,
also it's not natural in other countries. Like in America, like obviously we're run by capitalism and we're told we have to, like, we're not productive people unless we work a 9 to 5 type of job.
yeah,
So it's crazy that there's that expectation.
and like they want people to work like give you 100% of their energy. Nothing works at
No,
100%
no
ever.
way. You're just going to get burnt out.
Exactly, which happened to me last year.
Yeah. I can only imagine. I feel like I get burnt out every couple of months, and then I just kind of emotionally check out a little bit. And I'm lucky where I'm
Mhm.
at a job where I have that flexibility. Where if some days, as long as I'm making my deadlines, if I'm like not a super present some days, like
Yeah,
it's okay. So I feel like it's really nice to be able to find a job that can accommodate those things. But it's so hard to find because everyone has to fit into this expectation that we're all like productive robots.
yeah.
So
And
that can be
like
really
my
tough.
previous job before I got laid off was in education, working for an education nonprofit. So I had to socialize a lot during the day, and that's a lot for me. I
Do you
don't.
consider yourself more of like an extroverted or an introverted person?
Uh, it fluctuates. Honestly, I feel like I'm an ambivert, which
Hmm.
people are like, it's not real, but it is.
It is real because also I feel like for me, it's like a social meter where I love to talk to people for like a very limited amount of time. And then I'm like, I
Mhm.
need to stare at the wall after
Oh
that.
my
So
gosh. Whenever I
I
go to
don't know.
parties and I'm like socializing, I have to go to the bathroom for like an hour just to like be by myself because I'm just like, I can't. Or
I
I'll
feel
pretend
that.
to be on the phone and I'll just leave.
Got to take care of yourself at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So that's reasonable. So I'm curious, what is like your dating life like since
Oh,
you've
God.
learned more about yourself? And that's okay if you don't
Whoever,
necessarily have one. I'm just curious, like, how that is playing out for you.
yeah, whoever told me that being bi means your dating pool's bigger, they lied.
It's such a lie.
Where is the dating pool? I don't know what you're talking about.
It's
It's
like no matter
been.
like it's no whatever side you look at, there's issues. So it's like if you want to date
Mhm,
women, there's you're facing women who have biphobia specifically against bi
mhm,
men. And then the other
exactly.
side of it, you're probably dealing with the same thing where they're like, you're not really gay or whatever. You know, there's
Hmm.
Can be
Yeah,
challenging.
I the last time I went on a date with a straight woman, I experienced biphobia from her,
No.
and yeah, on my Hinge profile it says I'm bisexual, and like that's something that's highlighted on my profile. I guess
Mhm.
she didn't read it. Um,
Read the profile before you go on a date with someone.
we went out to coffee, and we were talking, and she asked me a question. She was like, "So what's the best achievement you've had this year?" And that was the year I came out. So I was like, "Oh, me coming out as bisexual and coming to my authentic true self." And she goes, "Wait, you're bisexual?" And I was like, "Yeah." uh, did you not read my profile? And she's like, "Oh my god, I can't date bi guys. I feel like you guys are gonna cheat on me, and you're not loyal."
Oof.
I got up because I didn't even pay for the coffee yet. I got up and I just left.
Hell yeah, that good for you. That's when you leave.
Mm-hmm.
She just like outed herself as like a homophobe too. That's
Yep.
wow.
So
I'm
on
sorry
that
you
day,
experienced that.
yeah, on that day, I was like, I'm more focused on dating other queer people rather than
Hmm.
straight people. Like, I'm not discounting any, like, all straight people. Like, if you are very open minded, and, you know, allow me to be my authentic true self and don't want to hinder that, cool. But I prefer to date other queer people.
I don't blame you. I feel like there's a better understanding of it. I mean, there are like plenty of straight people who are very great for dating queer people. They're very understanding, but it's harder to find, very much harder.
Yeah.
And even like there's still like a lot of internalized biphobia even with queer people. Like
Mhm.
I found like I've interviewed other queer men and they talk about how bisexual women have the same things that like straight women have against bi men. And it's crazy to me. Like if you're a bi woman and you refuse to date a bi man, I just don't understand that. But that's a whole other
Yeah.
topic.
I've even gotten it from gay guys as well.
Mm.
One guy I was talking to, we were having a great conversation. I thought it was going great, and then um, I brought up the fact I was bisexual, and he was like, "Oh, I don't like bi guys. You guys are like not loyal." And I was like, "You were just talking about a threesome, sir. What do you mean?"
Yeah, what the hell? Well, I guess I don't like biphobic people, so
Right.
a good comeback for that.
And it's always like confusing, and it honestly, like for me, sometimes it makes me feel less, and like kind of hurts my worth, and I feel like, What's wrong with me? Why is no one?" And like all these stereotypes are not true. Not all bisexuals are promiscuous. Not all bisexuals are cheaters. A cheater is a cheater, no matter
You can be
what
a
their
straight
orientation
cheater.
is. Mm-hmm.
You could be a gay cheater,
Exactly.
a lesbian cheater. Yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with your sexuality. And the same thing
Mm-hmm.
with like, I think because people just assume that we're non monogamous, which there's nothing wrong with non monogamy, but it doesn't, if you're bisexual, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're polyamorous. That's
Right.
just a very different thing. So I think people confuse all of those things. You mentioned that like when you first came out that you were like building kind of like a community of other people in the similar boat as you. Could you talk a little bit more about like the community that you found and how that's helped you along your journey?
Yeah. So when I came out last year, I felt really lonely. I knew I was going to lose a lot of friends after I like publicly came out. And it's unfortunate that that happens, but at the same time, they didn't love me for being me. They loved the version of me that they wanted. Um,
Mhm.
so I wanted to find like a community of queer people to be around because I was a baby gay and I was like, I don't have anybody here. So one of my friends invited me to a queer space in Orlando. Um, and it's like they have drag shows, they have like queer events and whatnot. So there's an event called Dolls Days Brunch, which is like queer vendors and drag shows happening. So I went, um, going in there, not expecting anything, also very nervous and scared because I was just like, I've never been in a queer space before. I don't know what to expect. Um, and I saw one of the vendors who had this like cool setup. Like they made clothes themselves. They had like crop tops, and I was like, I like your stuff. And we got talking, and then I told her like, "Yo, I just came out recently. I'm trying to find like queer friends and community." And then she started introducing me to everybody. It's just like everyone who came in, she's like, "Hey, this is Nathan," and they're like introducing me to all these people who were so loving, so supportive, and just like hugging me and embracing me, like, "Welcome to the community." And I was just like, "Oh,
I
thank you."
love that. That's so
Yeah,
sweet. See, there
it
are
was.
great communities out there for queer people.
Mhm. And I was talking to someone about this last week. Like, we need more queer spaces that are like during the day and not at night only, because there's a lot of
Mhm.
like just nighttime queer spaces. Like, there's nothing for us to do during the day. I feel like
Mhm.
everything revolves around like clubbing or whatnot. So I want
Yeah, and
to see
that's
like,
definitely not a lot of queer people's vibes. Like, especially
mhm,
sapphic women. I don't know a ton of like queer women who love to club all the time, but I
you're
also
right.
am in my 30s now, so that could just be with my age. But also, that kind of so one thing that you talk about on your profile too is your journey with sobriety. So I feel like having daytime queer spaces, whether it's around coffee, just games, like would be ideal for anyone who's sober. But I'm also curious. So was the journey with sobriety around the time that you came out as well, or was that a different time?
No, that was a different time actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I started drinking when I was 16. Um, when I was in high school, because I got bullied a lot and I dealt with depression.
Mhm.
Um, and it was like a way of coping and just numbing those feelings. But when I graduated high school, I moved to the UK for college for 2 years, and I just went wild because the drinking age over here is 18, and I was
Yes.
just going extremely crazy. Um, and my drinking got worse because of my like me trying to fit in, me trying to mask my autism and trying to be someone I wasn't. Um, it got to the point where I was like pouring vodka in my coffee or hot chocolate in the mornings and bringing it to my classes and drinking it, hiding bottles in my room. Um, I got into an argument with my mom one night on the phone because I told her I was dropping out of school. Um, and at the end of that call, I drank a whole bottle of vodka, and I ended up, trigger warning for everyone, self
Mhm.
harming, which it was very hard for me. Um, I had to have a friend come over and bandage me up. Um, and after dropping out of school, um, I think like 2 years later, after like continuously still drinking and trying to cope with my depression and mental health with alcohol, I got to the point where I was just like, I don't recognize who this is, and I just don't feel great, and I want to stop drinking. So in 2019, I made that decision to just cut alcohol out completely, by myself. I didn't go to any AA meetings or anything. It was just the will to do it.
Wow.
Um, and so I'm about to be 5 years sober this year.
Yay, congratulations. And
Thank
thank
you.
you so much for being so open and talking about your journey and especially with like mental health and everything. I think that's really helpful for people to hear and it's just so
Yeah.
nice that you're willing to be so vulnerable and open about it. But that's a big feat and doing it on your own too. Do you have
Yeah.
any advice for anyone else who's like considering cutting out drinking?
Yeah. I'd say give it a try. Um, if you want to try it out, like try like a week maybe,
Mhm.
see how you feel. And if you want to continue, then just having those goals, having those people to support you. Because one of the things that I had was the my friends who I would text them if I ever felt like triggered to drink. They would like talk me out of it or like talk me down. And I also
Mhm.
have the sober community, which is surprisingly massive. Um, they really helped me stay sober and gave me advice and encouragement. Just don't feel like you're alone. Just if you want to cut drinking out, talk to someone who's sober, like someone who will encourage you and check up on you and help you meet your goals. Like that's how I did it.
And did you see like an immediate change from when you did quit, like maybe a couple of months after, of just like a change in your mental health?
I think after a month, I like definitely noticed a change in my physical and mental health because I felt less tired.
Mhm.
Um, and like my mind was just able to just decloud itself. I don't even know if that's the right way to say it, but
No, but I get you. I get you for
yeah,
sure. Yeah. And I'm sure that like, so being sober on top of also just like learning about more about yourself over the years, getting the diagnosis, coming out, do you feel like that journey would have been different if you were still drinking?
probably. I feel like I still would have been in the closet probably because I still use alcohol as well to like block out all the spots of being queer because
Mhm.
I was still religious at the time. So I was like trying to like drain any thoughts of being queer. Like I felt shame, so I drink. I felt guilt, so I drink. If I didn't quit drinking, I don't know where I would be right now.
Scary to
I
think
probably
about.
would not be out. I probably would not have made it to this moment.
Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're out. What is your
Thank
life
you.
like now? Just being, I feel like I asked you this in a different way, but just like hearing about your journey and now you're fully like, you know, everything, well, not everything about yourself, but you know a lot more about yourself. How do you feel now?
I
That's
feel
like a
great.
very vague question, but that's great.
I feel so amazing. I feel like I'm able to just be my true self now. There's no more putting a mask on and hiding the fact that I'm bisexual. Like I'm just free. Um, it's really taught I've taught myself a lot about myself, and really gave myself a lot of self love. Um, I just I'm very happy. I can't stop smiling every day when I think about it. I'm just like, wow, little Nate would be so proud of me.
You really are like beaming talking about it. It's like making me so happy.
But
So,
yeah,
what would be your ideal queer space then? So, like, do you have any ideas of like a space that would be awesome for even if you're not sober and you just don't want to be at a club? Like, what would be an awesome queer space for you?
I don't know if it's just like a neurodivergent or queer thing, or it's probably both, but I love Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
I would love a D&D space just to have that because like me and my friends, we're all queer. We play D&D and it's the best time ever. I didn't even want to play D&D last year until they convinced me. And now I'm just like, when's the next session?
That's
When are we
amazing.
going?
We actually, where I live, there's a queer and trans owned a restaurant, and they have like a Dungeon and Dragons night. And my coworker, who's also bisexual, she like goes to it all the time and talks about how fun it is. So I feel like those things exist. It's just hard to find. And you
Yeah.
know, people should just start their own queer groups. You know,
Mhm.
start your own Dungeons and Dragons group. Why not?
Yeah. Which advice if people need it? Like if you want to find queer groups, like Meetup is a great place to look.
Mhm.
Um, or on Facebook groups, you can find
Ooh,
some queer groups in your town or city. I definitely found some of those in Orlando, and I was able to meet up with some people. And we hung out, went to the theme parks. We like went to movies, got food. So those are some great resources to check out if you need to find like community.
that's some great advice. So Nathan, what is next for you?
Oof. Next, I am currently on a journey of going through um, being non-binary and
Oh,
figuring that out. And also on a journey of discovering polyamory and just kind of
oh,
just exploring that. But right now I'm like traveling, doing volunteer projects around Europe. I'm going to be in the UK for the next 6 months, probably, just being here at the hostel volunteering. But um, I'm just so happy to be on the podcast, and I'm grateful that you had me here.
I am so grateful that you joined, and this has been a really nice conversation. I'm also excited to hear about your journey with being non binary and also polyamorous, which I feel like you probably were able to get in that place because of, all the learning and,
Hmm.
things that you went through on your own journey. So that's so
Yeah.
exciting. Is there anything you want to share about that, or just, we can
Yeah.
follow you into your journey over time?
I can share. Yeah, growing up religious, obviously, it's all about monogamy and marrying for like growing up. It was always hammered into me that you need to get married, you need to have kids. Like that's the purpose of life, and it's not. So when I started learning more about myself and my sexuality, and discovering different things, I was just like, I have a lot of love to give, and I'm capable of giving that love to multiple people and not just one. Like I can be monogamous, but I know I can also be polyamorous. So I started to like talk to a few friends who were poly, getting resources for that, reading about it, um, checking out apps like Field, um, and it's been a fun journey so far. Um, I'm just still single.
Enjoy your singlehood. That I feel like right now is like such a prime time to be single because you're so happy and like so focused on yourself that I feel like this is
Mhm.
the perfect time to learn more about yourself and experience polyamory and try it out. So I'm pumped for you.
Thank
And
you.
also I think there's something beautiful about being open to being polyamorous and monogamous. Like I feel like it always depends on like the type of relationship you're in. So I think that's really wonderful. I'm excited for your journey. So,
Thank you.
and where can people find you where they can, continue to see your journey?
Yeah, you guys can follow me on Instagram at Nate's Dreamy Life, or on TikTok with the same username. I'm always posting. I try to post whenever I can when I have spoons available. Um, but yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Is there anything you want to share with listeners that we didn't get to talk about?
I just want to say Happy Pride Month. We're
Happy Pride
here.
Month.
And I just want to say to those who may be feeling like maybe scared and, been struggling with coming out or wanting to come out, you don't have to come out. Like, that's up to you. Just know that
Mhm,
you are a beautiful human being and your queerness is beautiful and there's
mhm.
nothing wrong with you. So, have a happy Pride Month.
That's right. That's so true. So beautiful. You're perfect the way you are. And I just love how open you were in this conversation. So thank you so much. And I think a lot of our listeners can relate and are going to really love this story. So I appreciate you coming on. And I'll be sharing all that info in the show notes. But yeah, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Nathan, for being on the podcast. It was such a blast to have you on, and thank you to listeners for listening through the whole episode. Again, I really appreciate all your support. One thing that killed me while I was editing this podcast episode is for those who don't know, I am a copywriter and I work in marketing. And boy, did I realize how much I say the word journey and how much I use it in work too. So yeah, that is a self realization I had while editing this. So you also get to hear it now if you've made it this far in. But if you'd like to support the podcast, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Giving us a rating and like actually writing out a review is super helpful. It gets the podcast up on the algorithm and gets it more seen so more people can find relatable bi plus content. If you'd like to follow us on social media, it's at Bisexual Behavior. And I'm at talia.tatiana. Not that I post that many exciting things because I don't. And if you want to give us a shout out, reach out to us, have a question or comment, you can email at bisexualbehaviorpod@gmail.com. And head over to bisexualbehavior.com just to check out the website if you're interested. All right, well, that's it until next month, and thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.